Hi, good morning, Mr. Vega. How are you?
Good, and yourself?
Okay, we're about to begin, okay?
Okay.
Good morning, my name is Parole Officer Smelling. Today is January 17, 2025, and this is a hearing of Connecticut Board of Pardons and Parole. The following board members are present this morning and by stating their names on the record certified they reviewed all statutorily required documents and available pertinent information for preparation.
Nancy Turner, good morning.
Good morning, Joy Chance.
And I'm Ellen Zappo-Sasso.
Please state your name and inmate number for the record, sir.
Boysie Vega, 369824.
This hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Boysie Vega 369824. He is serving a sentence of 10 years, execution suspended 30 months, with 4 years probation to follow for criminal possession of a firearm, illegal sale or purchase of a large cap magazine, risk of injury, violation of standing criminal protective order, and 2 counts of violation of protective order. As of today, records reflect a parole eligibility date of May 14, 2025 at 50%. There is no victim input in this case. The offender has an offender accountability plan. A review of the plan shows the offender has completed domestic violence, and he's currently participating in Tier 2, which ends in February 24th, 2025 to date, and remains on the wait list for a job to date. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system scores, the offender overall score for recidivate falls within the high range. This is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin, sir. Mr. Vega.
I want to start by saying good morning. It's an honor to stand here before you today. While being incarcerated, I've learned from my mistakes. I've learned a lot about myself while sharpening for society. As you said, I've completed domestic violence, where I've learned to identify controlling behavior and picked up points on healthy relationships like communication, and most important, the impact and effect that it has on the kids mentally and emotionally. I'm currently in Tier 2, where I'm learning about addictions and triggers and things that trigger you to use drugs. Upon my release, I plan to work with my old employer and work on goals that I haven't accomplished yet. I need to become a role model for my kids and give them a better, safer life. And by granting me parole, I will not only be able to accomplish my goals sooner, but I'll be able to prove to parole that I'm ready to be released to the community and be with my family and with the tools I've learned. And once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Vega, for that opening statement. We are going to ask you some questions, and I'll begin. So your charges are really concerning. I think one of the circumstances that makes me most worried are when perpetrators of domestic violence are in possession of firearms. I think that's a really dangerous combination. And then you add in substance use and you get, distorted thinking, poor emotional regulation, and that's when people die. So I'm glad that you've taken the domestic violence program. I'm glad that you're being held accountable for being in illegal possession of firearms. And I'll note that you have 5 years on the deadly weapon offender registry ahead of you when you're back out in the community. And I hope you'll take that obligation very seriously. So this is your 3rd period of incarceration greater than a year, and you have not had any disciplinary issues. So that's very positive. and I want to acknowledge that. And you've taken some programs, and those two go hand in hand. When you get DRs, it keeps you out of programs. So when you do abide by the rules of the facility, then you're afforded opportunities for programming. So you got a sizable sentence of 10 years. So when you go out, you have 6.5 years hanging over your head of these current charges when you're completing your 4 years of probation. So you need to really take your probation seriously and abide by the terms, because you can be brought back and made to serve that 6.5 years that's suspended. You are also afforded a number of breaks for some assaultive behaviors you committed out in the community. You got unconditional discharges for, an assault on a juvenile. So, you've been granted some considerations in this process. Tell me why you had such a hard time abiding by the court's order to keep you from the victim.
That was the mother of my child.
Do you understand the question? Trying to
Yes,
understand.
that was the mother of my child. The first case, it was never really told to me that I had to not live with her because I was living with her. So then the second case, and then obviously behind the backs of the court, we were still in a relationship, a healthy relationship. So one of the cases we were pulled over, and that's why I have a violation of protection order.
So why didn't you do the adult responsible thing, and the two of you go to the court and ask for the protective order to be removed?
We did, but the court still wanted to keep it, and I don't know.
And you didn't give a damn?
I'm not saying I didn't give a damn, it's
just like picking up firearms when you're a convicted felon and prohibited from possessing them. So what we're trying to do here today, Mr. Vega, is make a decision about whether you're suitable to finish the 2.5 years you have to serve out in the community, and we have to make that decision in light of the interests of public safety. And you have been unsuccessful 4 out of the 5 times you've been granted supervision in the community. You score out high for your risk to reoffend, and your criminal history goes back to 2011. So all of this is really concerning because it involves drugs, it involves assaultive behavior, and now it involves guns. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to help you today. You're attempting in 2021 to work out the relationship, and you punch the victim in the face. So what does a healthy relationship look like, since you mentioned you learned about that?
After that, I've learned to never put my hands on her ever again, and just communicating with her. We have a baby now together. The baby just turned 2 months. Just being able to communicate more and understand each other more.
Well, how about respect?
Respect, of course.
How about trust?
Trust.
How about communication?
That as well.
You're an adult. You have a responsibility to control your own emotions. And, where things go south is when you act out on those emotions instead of, making a conscious choice about how to handle your feelings. I think you didn't have to take the domestic violence program to know that you shouldn't put your hands on another person in anger, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. one of the things that stood out for me in reading the documents is that your whole support system is women. And yet you were willing to abuse your partner, and I assume she was pregnant at the time.
No, she wasn't.
So, okay.
She became pregnant after all that.
So, you know, you said you put your hands on her because you were overall angry. What were you angry about?
Angry about the cheating and stuff she was doing behind my back.
So instead of taking your dignity and walking away like a reasonable adult from a relationship in which you've been disrespected and rejected, your decision, and it was a choice, not a mistake, was to assault her. Why?
There's no reason why. It was just a bad decision.
So now you're with somebody that you already don't trust. How's that going to work? Raising a baby together.
That was in the past.
Well, she is the victim of your 2023 domestic violence case. So how's that going to work going forward?
I mean, that wasn't a domestic case. That was just us getting pulled over in the vehicle. There was nothing domestic about the 2023 case. We got pulled over in the same vehicle and I had order protection. So I was incarcerated. Well, I was arrested for that. But it was nothing, it was no police called.
So let's go back to the actual point of the question, which is that you're in a relationship where somebody disrespected the trust between the two of you and was unfaithful. So how have you worked out those issues so that you can be together without violence?
We communicated. We both learned from our mistakes.
What are you learning from tier 2 that's helpful to you?
Triggers of how to identify triggers of when you feel like you're going to use. I'm still not completely done with the program, so I'm still learning new things every day. But what I've learned so far are like triggers, problem solving, identifying certain things that might be a trigger, you know, hanging out with old friends, of course, going to certain, you know, you want to stay away from the bars and nightclubs and stuff like that.
The people, places, and things?
Yes.
Okay, so what are your things?
Things that trigger me. Probably things it'd probably be like more like places and people.
What's the job you plan to return to? The fence company?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in touch with anybody since you've been incarcerated?
Yes.
Did you ask them to send you a letter saying that they would rehire you?
The letter should have been there. It was faxed over there. This is my first time. I don't know a lot of that.
Officer Shelley, do we have a letter? A letter offering him employment? He said it was faxed over.
No, didn't receive one. Not the, yeah.
So have you ever taken a program a fatherhood type program before?
No, I haven't.
I think that'll probably be helpful to you. You know, you've got the two spectrums. You've got infancy and you've got pre-adolescence. So, you know, it's a lot to straddle with children, especially if, you know, you haven't been there in their lives for a while. When you were serving probation back in 2017, did you take a domestic violence program out in the community?
Yes, I did.
What was it called?
It was the REACH program. And I completed it in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I don't remember. I know it was the networking REACH program. That's what it was called. I do not remember.
Would have been the Explorer program or the Evolve program?
Evolve. You're correct. Evolve.
So you're in tier 2 now.
Yes.
When did you start that?
About 3 weeks ago.
So at the end of December.
Yes.
And you finished domestic violence in September. What do you do with your time there in the facility?
I work out. We don't really get too much time out the cell, but I read books. I'm on the list for a job. I've been waiting for a job for the longest, but I guess you can't do a job in a program at the same time.
Not sure that's accurate, sir. You don't have a GED yet.
No.
You did some work on it out in the community at Adult Ed.
Yes.
Did you ask to go to school there in the facility?
No.
You got all this time. Why wouldn't you make that a priority?
No, I don't know. Just.
All right. Well, I would encourage you, you know, as you raise your daughters, that you value your own education and you put in the effort to get your GED. It's going to be a foundation on which you can build the rest of your life, but you can also show your children that you value an education, and hopefully then they'll value an education for themselves. You know, it takes some effort, but it's definitely worth it. Do you have any life goals, sir?
Absolutely. Would love to own a business and a house and just be successful and be comfortable.
You know, so oftentimes those require taking out loans, and they're going to want to see, you know, strong credit, and they're going to want to see that you have a foundation like an education that means you could pay those loans back. So again, you know, please give some thought to furthering your education. You're only 32.
Yeah, my birthday's actually tomorrow. I'll be 33.
You ever had a birthday in prison?
Yeah.
You know, I sincerely hope for you, sir, that this will be your last period of incarceration. But you really got to take the things that you're learning and make a commitment to changing how you've been out in the community, because it's pretty unacceptable, the things that you've been engaged in and the choices that you've made. So, you know, I hope you want better for yourself. Thank you for talking with me, Mr. Vega. Ms. Zaposasu?
Morning, Mr. Vega.
Good morning.
I do have a couple of questions that I'd like you to give us some detail on. The first is, in one of your interviews, you talked about that you've had anger issues and fighting issues since elementary school. So I'd like you to talk to me about what you learned within the domestic violence program, which I know has an anger component, about your anger.
They taught us things that might trigger your anger, like sweating, ways to walk away from certain situations. What else?
You mentioned the power wheel, and that wasn't something I was familiar with. Can you talk about the power wheel?
The power control wheel, it's more or less like certain things that you do when you're speaking to someone that you might not feel like you're controlling, but in a sense you are controlling in a way. So it just shows you like this, it's like a circle, and basically it shows you, behaviors and how certain gestures could rub off on the next person and show, and then that's, that'll escalate certain situations that could be small into something bigger.
Do you know what made you angry as a child and what's carried forward over the ensuing years that make you angry and engage in some of these behaviors? Was there something that you can identify?
I mean, yeah, there's always triggers. You don't just wake up angry. Some people do. I don't know why. But usually it's something that triggers you, being bullied as a kid, growing up without a father figure, people bully you for that. You just try to stay positive.
Thank you. In terms of the relationship that you're currently in, you're a significant other. She's also the mother of your child, but she's also the victim in this case. What has she done to help herself? Has she done any counseling, or has she engaged in any programming in order to come to terms with your relationship?
I believe she did one program. I don't know exactly what it was. It was more or less when the domestic case first started because of the kids being involved. Other than reaching out to any others programs, I do not think she.
Yeah, so you don't know if she's in counseling?
No, that I know of, no, she's not. It was only one.
Okay. Is there any DCF involvement with your family?
No.
So do you remember when you met with the parole officer to prepare the report that we're reading today? Was that recently?
Yes.
Okay. So there's a couple of things that I'd like to ask you about in that report. In one of them, in one comment that you made, you denied having any substance use issues. Have you thought about that in terms of everything that's happened? Do you think you have a problem, an addiction problem with alcohol or substances?
No, I don't.
So you think if you're adequately able to manage smoking marijuana multiple times a day and that's not affected you at all?
No.
Okay. Did any of these offenses and problems occur while you were under the influence or had been smoking marijuana?
Alcohol, yes, not marijuana, though.
Okay. You had mentioned to one of my colleagues that your gun was for protection, that you felt you needed that for protection. But I guess my question to you is, you're walking around the community or your own neighborhood maybe with a firearm, a 17-round magazine in its well, 16 live rounds, and one chambered. Tell me about what your protecting yourself from with that amount of weaponry and ammunition in a bag? What's going on?
I mean, I work for a living doing fencing and I make pretty good money. So I buy nice things for myself. And living in Bridgeport, I don't want to become victim to senseless acts of people doing stuff. So yes, I had it for protection, to protect myself.
Do you have a permit, Mr. Vega?
No, I don't.
So I get the protection piece, I get the nice things, but that's kind of a small arsenal in terms of what you had. And it seems to me your idea of protection could also turn into a situation where if you had actually used those weapons and had been engaged in a situation, we might be sitting here having a conversation about totally different charges. I just don't understand, and I don't live there. So I guess I need more from you in terms of, you didn't have a permit, you have all this weaponry. You know, it's concerning that with the guns and the climate that we're currently in, nothing good can come of that. Are there any other strategies that you're going to be able to employ when you're back out in the community to protect yourself without having all of this?
I mean, I guess I'm just gonna have to suck it up and just not have a gun. That's the smarter thing to do. I can't do nothing about it. I'm not gonna break the law again and be driving around with a gun, and you know, that's 6 years on top plus whatever more. I can't keep doing this.
Well, you're legally prohibited from having a weapon because you're going to be on the deadly weapons registry. So there is that. Have you thought about maybe relocating someplace other than Bridgeport with your family?
Yes, but you know, it takes time and money. It's not going to happen overnight.
I understand, but I'd just like to know whether you were considering that as an option, since that apparently is, you know, one of the areas of concern, so to speak, from terms of security. Okay, I guess my last question that I have is, as you said, it's your birthday tomorrow, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
But also in this report, there is a statement that was made that really resonated with me, and it was actually kind of sad. The statement was, Mr. Vega has spent the majority of his life in and out of the system. How does that make you feel now that you have a daughter that was just born, an older daughter, and you have 33 years under your belt, and you spent a majority of it involved with people like us, the courts and the prisons? Is that enough to make you have some thoughts about changing the way things have been going?
Absolutely, yes. It definitely does. It's almost like becoming a stereotype, another statistic where you're just in and out. You know, even though I did have 10 years out there before this incarceration, it's still, you know, I still ended up here no matter what.
And I think you should look back at those 10 years, Mr. Vega, and know that you can do it, that you are capable of being successful in the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Chance.
So, Mr. Vega, what keeps going through my mind is that when the Bridgeport police responded to several calls in regard to a domestic dispute, there you were, all these people were there, you were angry, and you had guns and ammunition. Can you imagine why all those people called in to complain because they had a concern? And I heard you tell my colleague that the job you had you were earning a good income, and you buy nice things for yourself, and you have to protect yourself. That didn't sound right to me. Everyone likes nice things. Can you imagine if all of us who go out and buy nice things get guns? Because who knows where is safer than the other place? Guns are everywhere. So you saying you have to protect your nice clothes doesn't sit well with me. Guns are pretty serious. And you indicated that, you know, there's some anger issue with you. And you completed the DV, and I hope that you take some things from the DV that is going to help you with that anger. So you were asked to identify a high-risk situation for you. And your response was if you couldn't find a job. So then the next question was, well, how would you deal with the stress and cope with not being able to find a job? You remember what you said?
No, I don't remember.
Your response was, well, I sleep and I eat daily. I don't know what that means. But I do know for you, it's important to have a job that pays well. So if you feel that you can't find a job or something else is going on that brings up your anger, how would you deal with it?
To be honest, finding a job is not difficult for me. The work I do shows for itself, so I have people that always are willing to hire me. How would I deal with not finding a job? I can't say because I've never had that problem.
That was the response you gave to the parole officer when she asked to identify what's a high risk. So what would you think would be a high risk situation for you in the community?
High risk. I mean, not finding a job is high risk because that's not an issue for me though. I don't know what would be a high risk for me. I don't put myself in certain situations I don't need to be in.
So what about if you get angry? Whether it's at the mother of your child, someone in the community, someone that you have a dispute with.
I mean, I deal with it how I deal with people in here. You just ignore the nonsense. You know, everyone's always going to get angry at something. It's what you do once you get angry. You know?
So that's what I'm asking you.
I mean, I deal with anger pretty well for the most part, other than the domestics, but
isn't that the same?
I mean, because you're asking me the question like if I'm going to just get angry and start punching people in the face. That's not my case.
So what do you do in a domestic dispute?
What do you mean in a domestic dispute? You're going to argue, you're going to communicate, and you know, I know not to do what I did before to come back in here.
Yeah, so That's the thing, you know how to do it, but here you are. And, you know, the concern is that you completed DV, but you're not specifically saying how you're going to address future domestic disputes that you have when you're in the community. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. The most I could do is just walk away. Walk away, little things that you know that are triggering. If you know the situation is escalating, just walk away. That's what they taught us in DV.
So your cousin, who you put for a sponsor, I guess she said she has several handguns, but she has license to carry. Is she the person that you want to be discharged to?
Yes, either there or my mother's house.
And you don't, neither of you have any concerns about the fact that you're going to be on the deadly weapon offender registry. You're not allowed to have or be around guns. And you don't see that as a problem.
I mean, I
told
her that when they called her, I told her to let them know that, because if I'm not allowed to go there, then I will go to my mother's house. But I told her, yes, let them know that you do have a license to carry and that you have guns in the house. And there's a possibility that I might not be able to parole to her house in that case. So she is aware of that. So I told her to, before anything, let them know that.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
Okay. So, Mr. Vega, just give us a few minutes, please.
Okay.
So I've heard some concerning things today. Starting with no apology from Mr. Vega for the things he was doing out in the community. And I think if we had anybody before us who was drinking 3 to 4 times a day, every day, we would consider them as having a problem. And we know that the residual of marijuana stays in one's system, and it does things like impairs judgment. It sort of zaps energy and makes it hard to achieve goals. But Mr. Vega, with that abuse of marijuana, doesn't believe he has a problem, and that concerns me. He talks about his triggers being people, places, and things, and he got arrested on the gun charge because he drove to a friend's house, got out of the car, walked into the building, and the police pulled up, and he had a gun on him. And if you have to take a gun with you to feel safe going to your friend's house, then maybe the decision should be made not to go to the friend's house. I just want to be clear that, Mr. Vega became a convicted felon in 2011 for a larceny, and he's gone on to commit other felony level crimes. Since 2011, he's been prohibited from possessing firearms and ammunition. And that's both at the state and federal level. So I think that 2.5 years for the things that he was doing out in the community in violation of our laws, the court orders, and the acts of the assaultive acts against other people is really appropriate. And I am not willing to grant Mr. Vega early release to discretionary parole on this sentence. I don't find him suitable. I have deep questions about his decision-making. Ms. Zappo-Saxon?
I hope that Ms. Vega takes the time within to participate fully in Tier 2 and concentrate on identifying the triggers associated with this substance abuse.
Okay. I'm sorry. I was going to write that down. Ms. Chance?
I agree with your comments, Ms. Turner. I'm
Okay.
in line with everything that you said.
Okay. So criminal history, nature and circumstance. Inadequate evidence of offender change. Are you good with those? Okay. All right, Mr. Vega, in the matter of Boysie Vega, inmate number 369-824, there's a motion to deny parole for the following reasons: your criminal history, the nature and circumstances of your current offenses, and an inadequate evidence of offender change. Do I have a second?
Second.